Did you get a note that that we're recording? We are recording, okay. Oh, would somebody just take that computer there and click, got it. Leslie, how nice to have you with us. We're just about to start. Okay, folks, so you'll want to, I'll put myself on spotlight for the moment. Okay. Yeah, sit there, fine. Right. Okay. Just wait for you to settle in. Our coffee machine is coming soon, and you'll be able to make yourself a nice cappuccino. Okay. After Pesach, just after Pesach. All right, everyone. Well, so welcome everyone to lesson 5. And in the previous lessons, we learned some ideas that could help us to change our perception of the world. And they're made always through mindfulness, through contemplation, through thinking about things in a different way. And in the last lesson, of course, we learned particularly that in every moment of the day, regardless how mundane the setting is, there is the possibility, the potential to have a sense of being close to God and having God present in our lives. But the reality is that these opportunities for very deep and concentrated meditation are actually, as we know in our busy lives, not readily available. And therefore, we have to find practical opportunities. We have to find hooks or times in the course of our ordinary daily lives where we can connect with some of the big ideas that we've been learning about in the last sessions. And the object of tonight's session is to find those hooks, because this, after all, is one of the goals of Jewish meditation. As we've learned so many times, it's not just about sitting and being relaxed and pushing things out of your mind. It's actually about bringing our world into a different kind of focus and perspective. So last week we learned that some fascinating things about time and the way in which the world is being recreated at every moment. B'chadesh b'chol yom tamid, constant process of creation, and that in every moment there is the presence of the divine in the world. And therefore, everything in the world, in some sense or another, has to have some godly energy in it. Even things which are, let me just see if this is somebody who is, can't take it here. So I just want to check there wasn't somebody from the show. So that means that even things which are ordinary or mundane can also be places where you can find godliness. And this is something which King Solomon declared in Proverbs. You'll see in your first text 1a on page 148, where he said very succinctly, know God in all your ways, and he will direct your paths. And the Talmud takes this a step further in text number 1b, where Darash Bar Kapara taught, which is a brief passage upon which all fundamental principles of Torah are dependent. And there's a whole discussion over there, and there are 4 views over here. Bar Kapara's view is this very verse, know God in all your ways, and he will direct your paths. This is a statement from Proverbs. So it's a fundamental Jewish principle that that a connection with godliness is present in all our moments of life, and not just those which are devoted to performing a holy act, such as putting on tefillin or lighting Shabbat candles. And as we're going to see in today's lesson, this is always accomplished only when there's proper intention and focus. You see, the difference is this: when you're putting on tefillin or lighting Shabbat candles, it's a mitzvah, irrespective of what you're thinking, either before it, during it, or after it. But other mundane activities only become connected, only become something, in inverted commas, in the service of God, when the person who's performing them does something mentally to connect with the action. And that's when things will begin to happen with that action. Without that intention, it's just not going to go. And we're going to see that this is a very extraordinary connection between mind and object. So in broad terms, this whole idea of knowing God in all of your ways is spelled out by Maimonides in text number 2 on page 150. And he says as follows: we should direct our hearts and the totality of our behavior to one goal, becoming aware of God, blessed be he. The way we rest, rise, converse, should all be directed to this end. For example, when involved in business dealings or while working for a wage, one should not think solely of amassing wealth. Rather, we should engage in such activities for the sake of being in a position to obtain that which our body needs: food, drink, shelter, and spouse. And then when we eat or drink or engage in intimate relations, we should not intend to do these things solely for pleasure, to the point that what we eat and drink only that we eat and drink only that which is sweet and tasty, and we engage in intimacy only for pleasure. Rather, we should focus our minds while eating and drinking on the exclusive benefit of maintaining a full and a healthy body. And therefore, we should not eat whatever the palate desires, which would put us on a par with animals, but rather we should select foods that are beneficial for the body, whether they are bitter or sweet. And we should avoid substances that are harmful to the body, even if they taste delicious. So there's a kind of totality over here, which to many of us sounds pretty scary, to be so obsessive about God that it has to dominate everything which you do in the world, that there isn't kind of like a period which okay, this time now I'm happy to devote to God. I'll go to shul and I'll give him my couple of hours. For goodness sake, when I go home, can I not just be myself? Can't I just kind of like mind my own business? I'm very grateful that God's there, but I don't have to be thinking about him all of the time. And this whole idea that everything has to be channeled toward godly devotion is something that is quite difficult for us all to grasp. But actually, it's not quite as bad as it sounds. That's the good news. There'll be plenty of bad news following, but that's the good news. Yeah. Tonight, we're going to focus on 3 distinct areas of our regular lives: eating, sleeping, and working. And what we're going to do is to look at each of these 3 ordinary areas of our lives, and we're going to move from our conventional, mindless, or perhaps not very mindful approach to these activities, to using them as hooks to develop a much deeper, more mindful approach, which of course are all rooted, as always in this course, in the teachings of Kabbalah and Chassidut, and that's why we spend so much time trying to back up everything we say with authentic texts. And at the end of each one of these 3 sections, we're going to have a meditation from Rabbi Leibowolf, okay? And we're going to begin tonight with food, because actually that's where the Kabbalistic and the Hasidic conceptions are primarily developed, okay? So let's start looking at food. Exercise 5.1 on page 152 asks the question: jot down your preferred food for each of the following: what you prefer to eat for breakfast, what you prefer to eat for a dinner date, what you like to snack on, what your comfort food is, and what you like for dessert. Now, we're not going to embarrass anybody who asking you to do this exercise, but here comes the crunch. Now you are stuck on a desert island. You're allowed to take a Bible with you and a selection of records, but you also have to take a food. And the question is, can you identify the food that you would take with you if you were stuck on a desert island? And the chances are, most likely, that the one that you'll want to take on a desert island did not appear in the list. Okay? And the reason for that? Simply because in the modern era, much of the food that we eat is not for survival. It's for reasons that largely boil down to pardon the pun, boil down to taste and enjoyment. Of course, in the back of our minds, we all know that we need food to survive. But that's not usually why we lick an ice cream cone or dig into a steak or grab just another snack bar. Yeah. But if we just were to pause for just a moment, it actually shouldn't be too hard for us to recognize what we already intuitively know, that the real reason why we're eating is because to keep ourselves healthy. And that is actually the most basic level of mindful eating. And even on this level, and we're going to go beyond this level, even at this level, it could have a real impact. If you were mindful about your food, it would lead us to make much healthier choices in what we eat, just by being mindful about it. If I'm saying I'm eating because I want to be healthy, you're going to think twice about that ice cream cone, on occasion, at least. But in Judaism, mindful eating actually isn't just about healthy eating. Before we put a single piece of food in our mouths, we recite a blessing. And the purpose is in order to be able to express gratitude to God for providing this food. So in that single moment of eating, with that thought of that blessing, the unremarkable act of eating is now being transformed into a godly moment of gratitude. It's just a little switch. It's a little click of the mind as you're about to eat, to say thank you. And the blessing is there to remind us that that's what we have to say, thank you. And if you take it a step further, and you think about the journey that this food takes to get to your table and into your mouth and into your stomach, down your throat and into your stomach, it is absolutely incredible. Because while today's children might be forgiven for thinking that tomatoes grow in the supermarket or that pasta is a vegetable, we know it's not the case. So let's take a little example over here. Your fettuccine Alfredo, okay? A farmer in some foreign country tended to the semolina for months. And then it was harvested and processed in an elaborate number of steps. Eventually it becomes flour. And then it's shipped off to a factory somewhere to be turned into pasta. And if you've ever made fresh pasta at home, you'll know that it's actually not very easy to make pasta. And it's very messy, apart from anything else. And here, all of a sudden, on your table, you have a ready-made box of the stuff, and you just throw it into a pot, and voila, you got it. Now think about the white cream sauce that goes with it, the Parmesan cheese. So think about what goes into creating a block of cheese for over a year, and then gingerly shaving it for crumbs and packaging it and shipping it halfway across the world. And think of all the machines that are required to plant and to harvest and to process, and the ships and the airplanes and the trucks and the trains that are built to transport these goods, and the machines that were required even to build those. If you ever wanted to sit down and make an exhaustive list of what processes went into your bowl of cornflakes in the morning, you wouldn't be able to finish it. That is the miracle of the box of cornflakes that lands up on our table in the morning for breakfast, or any food that we eat for that matter. Does anyone ever think about that? Does anyone ever have a sense of wonder and gratitude that we live in an age where this can simply appear on our tables with such consummate ease. Funnily enough, as it happens, God is actually even more involved in farm to table in the whole journey than what we might even imagine, because there are a number of mitzvot that would be associated with working in the field to grow foodstuffs. In fact, there are 10 mitzvot. And as it turns out, there is a very unique and special custom that we do prior to eating bread in order to recall the 10 mitzvot which have to go into producing flour. And you'll see that in text number 3 on page 153. Before reciting the blessing over bread, put both your hands on the bread. Ever seen people at the Shabbat table picking up the Khalas? Why do you pick them up? 10 fingers, the 10 mitzvot. For your 10 fingers reflect the 10 mitzvot associated with bread making. Isn't that fascinating? They are to avoid plowing with 2 species of animals together, to avoid growing forbidden mixtures of plant species, which is called kilayim, to leave leket, shikha, and peah, the 3 distinct forms of overlooked harvest for the poor to collect, to bring the first fruits, the bikurim, to Jerusalem, to donate the tithes, the truma tithes, to the Kohen, to observe the rites of Maaseh Rishon and Maaseh Sheni, the other tithes, to the Levite and to the poor, and finally to donate a portion of dough to the Kohen, and that portion of dough which is given to the Kohen is called Khala. Actually, what we call Khala is not Khala. What we have on our table is after Khala has been taken. The Khala is the part you've given to the Kohen. But there you are. But we can go further than that. It's not just about pausing to be grateful for the food in this long chain of production that gets your food to the table. That gratitude is all very well. So we've had 2 levels of mindful eating now. The first one is at the lowest level. I'm eating to be healthy. The second is I'm making a blessing in order to be able to appreciate with gratitude how this food has come to me and that I have it. But there's a much deeper level as well. Everything in the world, as we've learned, is imbued with divine energy. And that applies to food as well. And just as science can pinpoint physical nutrients in the food that provide nutrition and energy to your body, there's also a spiritual nutrient in the food that's going to provide energy for your soul. Because the physical nutrients can't exist by themselves. We learned that all the way back in lesson 2. There has to be a godly force behind them in order for them to exist. So by making a blessing, making a bracha before eating, it focuses your mind on that spiritual energy, which is now being drawn from the food and being drawn into your body. And the Baal Shem Tov explained this in text 4a on page 154. When God declared, "Let the earth give forth living souls," or "let the earth produce vegetation and fruit trees," those very words created everything. And those same utterances continue to function as the inner life of that which was created through them. When we take a fruit or any food and recite a blessing over it with proper intent, articulating the words, "Blessed are you, God," and mentioning God's sacred name, the spiritual energy responsible for bringing that fruit into existence is activated. And this occurs because everything was created through the divine name. And our articulation of God's name in the blessing awakens the divine energy that flows from God's name within the fruit. Then the awakened energy within the fruit provides spiritual sustenance for our own soul. And this can only work with kosher food, substances that God himself directed us to sublimate from mundane to divine. In non-kosher food, the spiritual energy is so deeply embedded in it that it is not within the capacity of our souls to reach it and to elevate it. And that is why you can't eat it. But kosher food is accessible to us. Its spiritual energy is accessible to us. And that's why we can eat it. And this is the deeper, pardon?
Where does that idea come from?
From the Kabbalah.
Okay.
Absolutely. And this is the deeper significance of the verse, know that a person does not live by bread alone, but rather by whatever comes forth from the mouth of God does a person live, a verse from Deuteronomy. It is not the physical bread alone that supports life. Rather, when we utter God's name in a blessing and activate the spiritual energy, that is what gives life to a person, or more precisely, to the soul that animates it. So something very fascinating is happening over here. You're eating this food and you are drawing out of it not just its physical energy, but its spiritual energy into you, to vivify you, to energize you. How does it work? So let me just show this to you in a share screen. I'm taking your suggestions of showing only very few slides, and I've just picked out the ones that I think are relevant to us. And this is our first one tonight. God's speech goes through to world, it creates the world. The godly sparks embedded in creation flow through creation. When I say a blessing, the power of my blessing and the power of uttering God's name draws out the spiritual energy out of that food and into me. One more idea, though. We're not finished with food yet. We've taken it now through 3 levels, and now we take it to its 4th level. Eating is actually not only for our benefit. It's not just what it does for me, either in terms of health or gratitude, or even drawing energy, spiritual energy into my being. When we eat, we connect with the spiritual energy that is in the food, and we release it back to its universal source, the spiritual source of that food, of that food in the universe. Eating elevates, this is a very common idea, this is throughout Chassidut, it's not a new idea here, but it is a very prevalent idea, that eating elevates the food being eaten and it changes it from ordinary to holy. But only if we eat in the right way, with the right intention. Because there are 3 ways in which we can eat. Gluttonously, mindlessly, or spiritually. The question really is this: why did God create us with a need to eat? It must have been within his capacity to create us without a need to eat, surely. The answer is that he designed us as humans with a need to eat physical food to survive, because through this mindful eating, we help the world to fulfill its ultimate purpose, which is to expose all of the buried underlying spirituality that lies within the world. And one of the most effective ways to reach that spirituality is in the food that we eat, because it is such a constant process for everyone, every day, everywhere. And if this food contains within itself embedded spiritual sparks, deeply hidden within the physical, within the material, And if the whole object of Jewish life is to expose the spiritual, to draw out the spiritual, to elevate the spiritual over and above the physical, to sublimate the spiritual out of the physical, and to return it to the spiritual source of the universe, that is actually what is happening in that moment when we eat. Because that spiritual energy is lying dormant in the food. And when you are eating it for a positive purpose, you unleash the power of that food that was waiting there to be released, and you connect it with its source of existence. And this explains the Kabbalists, is why you would suddenly have, it's the secret of that sudden craving that you have for mint chocolate chip ice cream. Because the hidden spark of spiritual energy in that ice cream needs to be released and elevated back to the source of spiritual life, and you become the medium through which that can happen. That's the power of your soul connecting with the spiritual energy in that food. That's the connection which was made. But you don't turn on your soul unless you're mindful. It's the mindfulness that makes it happen. Once again, in the words of the Baal Shem Tov, in reference 4b, text 4b on page 157. An analogy. A king lost a precious gem and wished his beloved son to have the great honor of being the one to successfully locate the gem. In truth, the gem was not lost. The king knew where it had been concealed, but he engineered the ploy to give his beloved son the opportunity of earning it. The king also wanted the distinct pleasure of witnessing his son's hard-earned success. The king went so far as to drop his son a hint as to where the stone could be found. The analog is clear. The entire purpose for which God created this world is to enable us to retrieve the divine sparks that are lost within materiality. For we are empowered to sublimate all kosher and permissible food items. On this theme, the Baal Shem Tov revealed a fascinating mystical truth embedded in the verse, hungry as well as thirsty, their soul enwraps itself in them, from Psalms 107, verse 5. These words came to answer the question, why did God create us with a craving for food and make our survival dependent on eating? And the answer is that there are divine sparks trapped in material entities. These sparks long to cleave to holiness. They call out for assistance, and our souls hear their call and respond to their plight. Whenever we eat or drink, we sublimate the divine sparks in the food or drink that have called out to us to achieve spiritual elevation through us. Thus, the mystical meaning of the verse is this: hungry as well as thirsty. Why do we experience hunger or thirst? Their soul enwraps itself in them because the soul, the divine spark, is trapped within them, the food, in a state of exile and seeks liberation. That puts a whole nother spin on eating, doesn't it? The power of meditation in eating. Because that's the point at which Jewish meditation comes in, you see. Everything we've just said about elevating the food to the realm of the holy can only happen when you click your mind into it. It all depends on how you eat. If you make that blessing prior to eating, and you're conscious of the divinity in the food, and you eat either with the intention to be healthy or to lead a purposeful, godly life, then the divine energy in the food is released. And not just this food. Let's come back to farm to table and all the things which have gone into the production of this food and the processes. This act of transformation, teach the Kabbalists, doesn't just apply to this little bit of food you're putting in your mouth. It goes all the way back down the line. It's not just the tuna sandwich that you're eating now. When you meditate properly or recite a blessing and eat with mindful, positive reasons, you're redeeming the sparks in all of the components associated with that food, the farm and the foreign land, all the other components, everything we described, everything is taken and everything becomes elevated up. So food becomes the major way in which we access the embedded spirituality in this universe, much more than through prayer or to fill in or all the davening we do in shul. Absolutely. However, yes, if you eat mindlessly, or even worse, gluttonously, I'm afraid it has the opposite effect. The spark of godliness is buried much more deeply in the muck of modernity, and this opportunity to make a difference to your own soul and to the universe is lost. Rabbi Shneur Zalman, the author of Tanya, spells this out as a binary in text number 5 on page 159. There's a way to position eating as an act akin to offering a sacrifice to God. For example, you can eat marbled beef, whatever that is. I don't know what marbled beef is. Nice fat, it means nice fat beef in the Hebrew. Marbled beef and drink fragrant wine for the sake of broadening your mind to better understand God and his Torah, or to fulfill the mitzvah of enjoying Shabbat and the festivals with good foods and beverages. When eaten in such a way, the meat and the wine are sublimated, that word again. Conversely, if you eat meat gluttonously, simply for corporeal pleasure, the energy you derive from that food or beverage is temporarily dragged down into the clutches of negative energy that obstruct God. That's how powerful meditation can be. And it takes something as mundane as eating and transforms it through the power of our minds into the very purpose of creation. Not just conventionally holy spaces, but in the kitchen, the living room, the car, the workplace. That's what we're talking about here. And eating is just an example. With proper meditation, you're able to transform anything and everything in your regular life into something divine. Meditation is the tool that a Jew uses to realize the purpose of creation. And the next 2 sections are going to demonstrate this as well. But for the moment, we shall share screen and see our first video for tonight. As soon as I get to it, I have to flick between all my different screens over here. Somebody just want to...
We don't dichotomize between the holy and the secular. In other words, everything has meaning. Everything is valuable. Everything is precious. Even the most mundane aspects of life contain deep spiritual meaning, and we relate to that in a very profound way. Even eating. You have been given a raisin, just hold it in your hand, and I'll tell you what to do with it.
Sorry folks, no raisins tonight.
So gently close your eyes and just become aware of your 5 senses. Become aware of what your eyes see at the back of your eyelids. Become aware of what you can hear in the room, even sounds within you. Become aware of the feel of the raisin, its texture. Anticipate the taste of the raisin once you begin to eat it. And become aware of any fragrance around you. I would like you to take the raisin and adopt a particular kavanah, focused intention. And the focused intention is that you are going to borrow the soul energy of that raisin and allow it to become part of your own energy system. You'll do that by eating it. To adopt a focused kavanah, we prepare ourselves by saying a bracha. A bracha, commonly translated as blessing, means a way of drawing down a channel for the soul spark within the raisin to become elevated through. Say it with me or just respond, Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam borei pri ha'etz. And begin chewing. And as you chew the raisin slowly, many times, become aware of the different textures that you encounter. And as the saliva mixes with the skin of the raisin, with the body of the raisin, it changes even more. Become aware of the sweetness of its taste. All these aspects that are the product of the spark soul of that raisin. Sweetness produces uplift of emotions. That is the soul spark within. Listen to your teeth chewing the raisin, thereby making it much more amenable to digestion. All the wondrous ways that Hashem created the world, all just for elevating the soul spark in the seemingly mundane and ordinary. Be prepared now to swallow the remains of the raisin. And as you do, sense how it becomes one within you. Its vitamins and goodness being extracted through the bloodstream into the needs of the body, and the soul spark within being released to a much higher spiritual state because of your bracha. Everything we do in life can be elevated and become much more meaningful if we understand the spiritual dynamics. Soul sparks exist in everything. When we do the right thing, we free the soul spark from its prison, channeling it to its higher source, and we become elevated in the process.
Well, that was just one raisin. It's going to take you a long time to get through your meal, isn't it? But it is a lovely meditation. And it does change the whole perspective of eating. That's the point. Okay, let's talk about sleep. Let's talk about sleep. Isn't it just crazy that we are designed to need to recharge for so many hours every day? Couldn't God have designed our hardware a little bit more efficiently and work around the need to sleep? Perhaps some Duracell batteries sort of stuck into our back somewhere, which can be replaced, each day, so you don't have to sleep. Well, the simplest reason for the need to sleep is to give us a fresh start. Imagine if life would be one single continuum, we'd just be absolutely exhausted, we'd tire out mentally, and we'd just get bored. You get stuck in a rut. You wouldn't be able to ever escape from a negative mood. So you go to sleep at night and you wake up in the morning and it's just great. Doesn't matter what happened yesterday. Today is a fresh day. Start again. Yesterday's disappointments are put aside, and somehow you have the energy to be able to face today with a whole new courage and sense of energy. And if you've had a bad day or a pressing problem, we know that sleeping on it makes all the difference in the world. Now, Judaism actually recognizes this idea, and as a consequence, it gives us a blessing to recite each morning that acknowledges the new you. The first, and of course the most well-known of these, is the Morder Ani Prayer that we recite in the morning, where as we open our eyes, we thank God for creating us anew and returning our souls to our bodies. So literally, the very first thing that a Jew does in the morning is to recognize that it's a new day and a new life, and that it's God to whom he or she owes our thanks. Actually, as it happens, Morder Ani, technically speaking, is not a blessing, because it doesn't have God's name in it. More specifically, the first blessing that we recite in the morning is a little bit further down the line, Asher Yatzar, which we thank God for all the workings of our bodies. We once again express our gratitude to God for his wisdom in creating us anew each day. It's text number 7 on page 163. Andrew?
Why is it Morder Ani Morder?
It's the ani in me that we want to say Morder to. Morder, what am I giving thanks for? The I.
Okay.
Page 163. It is customary to recite the blessing Asher Yatzar each morning, because at the start of each day, we are like freshly created beings. It is therefore appropriate to praise God daily for having created human beings with his wisdom. The fact that sleep affords an opportunity for a fresh start is not just by virtue of the fact that we turn off for 8 hours. It actually does something else very importantly as well. It stops the relentless rush of today. And it affords the opportunity to pause at the end of the day before we sleep and to look back over the past day, to take stock of the day, things which went right, things which didn't go so well, and the things which perhaps we can fix for tomorrow. And Judaism calls this process, which happens every night before we go to sleep, in the Shama prayer that we recite before we go to sleep, it's called Cheshbon HaNefesh, an accounting of the soul. Kind of like a daily soul searching, stock taking. So instead of leaving it to the annual review at Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, by which time you've forgotten everything which has happened throughout the entire year, and you can't think of a single thing that comes to mind when you sit down, let me think about the year, and it's all a blank. So therefore the sages said, actually, the time to do it is at the end of each day before you go to sleep at night. This is called the evening accounting. The Cheshbon Nefesh is text number 8 on page 163. Before lying down to sleep each night, this is taken from the Zohar, this is Kabbalah. Before lying down to sleep each night, we should take stock of our deeds throughout that day. We should repent for whatever we did wrong and ask God for compassionate forgiveness. The point over here, of course, is that without a pause button to press, we'd probably never stop to take stock at all. And Judaism wants to build a meditation into the daily process of sleeping. And by the way, another element built into this nightly procedure, the one that is part of the Shema prayers, is the practice of forgiving those who have wronged us during the course of the past day. And the act of letting go of the past day's toxicity is what allows us to actually move on to the next day. If we didn't ever stop to forgive, we'd never be able to move on, stick with us like in the throat. And we just have an unending kind of wakeful experience of the toxic in our lives. So that was the additional reason for putting this in at nights. Again, a share screen for a slide which I thought would be a helpful one. And I'll just move us on here, if I can. Here we are. So it's a time to pause, to press the pause. It's a time to take stock. And it's a time to let go of toxicity. Toxicity, easier to say, yeah. But again, we're not finished. What's happened to my cursor here? Here we go. Because there is, again, a mystical level to sleeping. It's an opportunity for the soul to reboot, so to speak. Because throughout the day, this soul, this precious soul, this high, big soul, which belongs to God, which is part of God, is trapped inside of our bodies. It's caught up in the layers of all the material garbage of our lives. It's had to live the entire day in a bodily consciousness, and it can only interact through the garment of the body. And that's not what the soul really wants. The soul desires something big and high to be connected back to its source. And so at night time, the process of sleep is the soul, actually, the vivifying soul. There's a level of soul that keeps us alive that has to be there. But the essence of the soul leaves our bodies, which is why we lose control of our conscious control over our bodies, why your arms and legs can flail about all over the place at night, why the command and control center has been taken away. And the reason for that is because as you fall asleep and as your consciousness fades away, your soul actually leaves your body and it goes back up to its heavenly source, where it becomes, for that period of time of sleep, a free spiritual being again. And it re-energizes. So when it comes back down into your body, it feeds that new spiritual energy back into your being. So when you wake up in the morning, once again with proper meditation, you can tap into that new spiritual energy of the day. Text number 9 on page 164. This then is the deeper meaning of the nightly ritual to recite the Shama, which concludes with the words cited in the reading above. Oh, sorry. Our sages instituted the practice of reciting the verse, Beyadcha avkid ruchi, into your hand I deposit my spirit, O Lord, each night before you go to sleep, just after reciting the bedtime Shema. And we should meditate on the idea that we are depositing our souls as if on loan, and consider to whom we are providing the deposit. And our souls then draw life from on high, that is a spiritual life. And that then is the deeper meaning of this nightly ritual to recite the Shema, which concludes with these words, B'yadcha avkid ruchi, I deposit my spirit into your hands. And it's a chance each night to reflect on the soul's journey and the opportunity for this turbocharge the following day. And here again, the notion of Jewish meditation becomes critical. Everything we've just said about drawing the soul's recharge energy into your body again at the beginning of the day can only happen with the express intention, the kavanah that you have when you go to sleep. When you say those words, I am sending my soul back up to you on loan for tonight. And I ask that you send it back to me again in the morning. And just mindlessly falling into bed at night because you're whacked from the day and you can't wait for your head to hit the pillow, loses this meditation opportunity to achieve this great sense of the soul re-energizing us spiritually when it's returned to us in the morning. And here is our next video, once again, on this topic.
Such a mystery, falling asleep, that absolutely beautiful transition as you move from consciousness into some state of subconsciousness. And what you're doing is allowing yourself to move upwards, wander your soul in higher realms where it is energized for the next morning. Gently close your eyes. And just become aware of waves rolling in from the sea. Observe one wave as it finally lands on the shoreline, losing its form, its last gasp, with its wetness extending, and then the excess gently rolling back into the sea. The cycle of a wave, the cycle of life. Are you aware of the moment of falling asleep, when the wave loses its form and spreads on the shoreline? Do you prepare yourself for the journey of your soul at night, when the soul rises to higher realms, enjoying a tutorial to further enlighten it, give it peace and rest, to become refreshed by morning time? Do you have complete trust in your sleep state? Do you willingly allow your soul to travel on high? That state of trust, bitachon, is so necessary for a good night's sleep. Beyodoi avkid ruchi. I deposit my soul in God's hands. The soul has been given to me by the manufacturer with a warranty, and that warranty includes nightly gain, improvement, refreshment. And that's why I sleep. Prepare yourself before you go to sleep to have a state of confidence that the journey will allow you to be a better you next morning. Say the Shama before you go to sleep to create that sense of absolute confidence as you deposit your soul on high. By doing so, the depth of your sleep allows the soul's return to be one that brings you strength and confidence the next morning. Prepare for a good sleep. Be confident in elevating your soul, and allow the next day to be a day of further growth and the soul's pathway through the body to reach out and make the world a much better place.
Isn't that a beautiful meditation? I bet you if we were to listen to that each evening before we went to sleep, we'd sleep a lot better. And it'd be a different kind of sleep, wouldn't it? Well, maybe we'll be able to get these videos and be able to circulate them to those who want to take them and put them on an MP, on a device and on your phone and listen to it before you go to sleep. Yeah. So we come to our third and final area, and that is work. So, of course, for most of us, work is an ingrained part of daily life. Even for those who don't have to work for whatever reason, either because of retirement or unemployment or any other reason, it's still an ubiquitous part of living. Despite the fact that work takes up the lion's share of our working hours, lots of people don't actually enjoy their work. And lots of people work because they have to. So the question is, how can we transform into a meaningful act something which we might be doing only because there's no other choice? Exercise 5.3 on page 165 asks the question, why do you work? Give 4 reasons. Once again, just pointing out to you, we're not going to do the exercise, but the immediate answer that many people will give to the question, why do you work, is, why don't be silly, in order to make money. That's why I work, to be rewarded for it. But hang on a second, why do you want to make money? And the answer to that, of course, is going to be very obvious. To buy the necessities of life, food and shelter and all that, and some of the luxuries that we enjoy to make our lives more pleasurable. But go behind those answers, and there is a deeper reason for working. The real reason why we work is because we want to provide for the people who we truly love. And of course for ourselves as well. And for many people, especially those who have families and younger families as well, working is an expression of love. It's proof that we're ready to act on that love rather than just sit and wait around and wait for things to happen to us or things to happen to us or around us. Now, this, of course, is not a particularly sophisticated idea. We all know it. But somehow, in the daily getting up and going to work, we kind of forget it. We opt out of it by default, and we just operate mindlessly again on a day-to-day basis. So a moment of meditation at the beginning of each day before setting out to work could actually give the whole day's work an entirely new meaning. If you think at the beginning of your day that you are engaging in an act of love, either love to your family or to the people that you love, or perhaps love to the people who you're serving if you're doing things which are going to make their lives better or more helpful, then suddenly your day becomes purposeful. It's a little meditation, but it's one which can make a big difference to the whole of your day, just by pausing before you go rushing off to think about, why am I working today? But once again, there is more to the story. Work isn't just about being able to put food on the table. As we all know, work actually has an inherent value. Many people actually work because they enjoy it. I know there are lots of people who don't enjoy it, but many people do enjoy it. I'm pretty certain that most of the people sitting around this table and joining us online probably enjoy their work because it challenges us and it gives us a sense of self-worth. So if you won the lottery tomorrow and you never had to worry about making a living again, would you choose to work nevertheless? And if the answer is no, then how would you spend your time? Are you going to sit at home and watch endless, stupid movies on Netflix? Or are you going to go on vacation, on holiday to the Bahamas and sit on the beach all day doing nothing forever? Doesn't work, does it? So why are human beings so wired to be always needing to do something? Why do we want to work? Why do we really need to work? And Judaism's answer is because work is an inherently good thing to do, even if you don't need the money. Look at this midrashic text next. Number 10 on page 166. Work is precious. All the prophets made a point of performing labor. Jacob requested, "Let me go back to tending and guarding your sheep." Moses was described as a shepherd. Moses was a shepherd, it says in Exodus. Regarding David, it stated, God took David from the sheep pen. The prophet Amos declared, "I'm a cattle herder and an inspector of sycamores, but God took me from following the flock," which by implication is what he really wanted to do. Work is precious. God only rested his spirit on Elisha, the son of Shaphat, while he was busy at work. As it is stated, Elijah went from there and found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, as he was plowing. And what did Elijah tell him? Go back to work. What did I do to you? Meaning, I didn't intend to interrupt your work. So from the very beginning of the Jewish story, a strong work ethic has been valued and encouraged. And what's more, by the way, it's embedded in the 10 Commandments. The notion that work is a covenant with God, similar to the mitzvah of keeping Shabbat. Where do we see that? Text number 11 on page 167. Love work, do not despise it. Just as God gave us the Torah along with a divine covenant regarding its observance, so did God give us a covenant regarding our mundane work, as the Torah says, 6 days shall you work and perform all your labor. And then the 7th day is Shabbat. 10 Commandments tells us to work. Whoever thought of that? Every time you looked at this, you thought, oh, it's telling me about Shabbat. Actually, it's telling you about the other 6 days, isn't it? Fascinating. So working essentially is a mitzvah. But why? Why? Why is work embedded in the very DNA of creation? Why does Judaism consider it to be so sacred? It's because human nature is not just to want the result of your labor, but that it should be your labor to earn your keep. You know, people will often forego a much bigger return than they would get from unearned and choose a smaller return as long as they know that they actually worked for it. The Talmud puts it very succinctly in text number 12 on page 168, which I'll read for you very quickly. A person prefers a single measure of their own labor rather than a gift of 9 measures of someone else's labor. And Rashi says it's dearer to the person because they've worked hard for it. So why would you work even after earning the lottery? Because it satisfies the basic human need to earn your own success. And finally, once again, there is a mystical level to work as well. Just as we've seen a mystical level to eating and a mystical level to sleep, and so too we come to the deeper level of work.
I think there's another reason.
Yeah, another reason as well, says Andrew. What is that?
Some people want to feel that they're still needed.
Some people feel they still want to feel that they're still needed. Okay, we'll accept that as well. But let's take a look at the mystical level. So the Talmud says that after 120 years, when the soul comes up on high for its final judgment, the very first thing the soul is going to be asked is not how much money the soul gave away when it was in the body, or how much Torah the soul learned, studied when it was in this body, but a very banal question. It is text number 13 on page 168, in case you're wondering what your first hurdle is going to be when you stand before the throne of judgment in 120 years' time. This is it. Rava taught, when we depart this world and must face heaven's judgment, each one of us is asked, did you conduct business faithfully? Did you designate times for Torah study? Did you engage in procreation? Did you long for the final redemption? Did you engage in the dialectics of Torah wisdom or attempt to extract a fresh concept from an existing one? Why would "did you conduct business faithfully" be the very first question? In the celestial court, in the world of souls and angels, and in front of God himself, do you think that the integrity of your startup really is the most important thing to be talking about? And the answer is apparently yes. Yes. Because just as in eating and sleeping, work, which is so much part of our lives, so constant in our lives, is yet another opportunity to find godliness everywhere. And to put it perhaps in American parlance, on Main Street, on Wall Street, or on Prairie Road. It's actually about finding meaning and exposing the power, the spiritual power of the world around us. As the Lubavitcher Rebbe puts it in text 14 on page 169, the way the Talmud phrases heaven's inquiry, "Did you conduct business faithfully?" allows for an alternative understanding. Not only does it include an inquiry regarding our honesty and our integrity faithfully, but also our spiritual approach. Faithfully means, did you work full of faith? Was your mundane and material work saturated with faith in God? Now, the truth of the matter is that finding God in the workplace means something different to each person. But it's important to understand that it doesn't only mean performing an overt mitzvah while working. For example, being honest, or being kind to co-workers, or being kind to staff, or pausing in the middle of the day to take a break to pray, to daven mincha. Rather, it means doing your regular, mundane, ordinary things, and in the process of doing them, continue to have an awareness and a mindfulness of God's presence. So this text, of course, is developed mainly for American students, but I'll use their example over here, even though it doesn't entirely apply to us. Imagine a person who is obsessed with baseball, okay? Can't understand why, but there are those people in the world. So an exhausted spouse will ask his or her partner at the end of the day while trying to put the children to sleep to come on in and pitch the 9th inning and close the game. Or a frustrated boss will tell a failing employee, okay, one more strike and you're out. Now, neither of these two examples actually has anything to do with baseball. And for people who don't know anything about baseball, these expressions make no sense at all. But when you are obsessed with baseball, you manage to speak baseball in everything that you do. You've seen this with people with football, for example, or men with sex, certain men, maybe women as well, I don't know. So similarly, if you feel close to God, if you see the hand of providence in everything that is happening, that happens in your life, then you will want to speak about God. He'll be present in your language, in your whole way in which you deal with things. And you don't have to just think about him in the study hall or in shul. He's with you everywhere, wherever you go, whatever you do. That's the level of awareness we're talking about. B'chol darchecha dayu. Know him in all of your ways that we started tonight with. And every person finds their own way of doing this. Perhaps it's using the phrase more often when somebody asks you, how many times a day you're asked, how are you? You know that people don't actually want to know how you are. If you start to tell them, their eyes will glaze over. But it's just a polite way of saying hello. In Israel, they don't say, how are you? They say, ma koreh. What's happening? What's going on? Pick up the telephone to somebody, say, somebody you don't know, never met him before. Morder, what's going on? Yeah. So what's the way to answer? How are you? I'm fine, thank you. Or the way the English do it drives me crazy. It's so negative. Not too bad. Like they expect it to be a lot worse, but they can't. They're very pleased that it's not quite as bad as they thought it was going to be. Yeah. Yeah. So what about saying Baruch Hashem? Or thank God? What happens when a non-Jewish person asks you how you are and you answer, thank God? What statement are you making about who you are and what you believe in? Or some people write on a letterhead, by the grace of God. It's little things. Or perhaps it's behaving in such a way in one's business dealings or one's daily interactions that it becomes absolutely clear to the person you're dealing with that you are a person of faith, you are a believer. They just sense it from you. It's the way in which you speak, the way in which you conduct yourself. So if God wanted us to lead pious and holy lives, why did he create a world in which we have to spend the majority of our time in a daily work environment? Why not create a world in which we could have lived permanently in a yeshiva or in a seminary? And the answer must be because the purpose of our lives is, as Jews, to find God not only in the obvious holy places, but in the unobvious ones as well. God does not only exist in shul. In the words of the Lubavitcher Rebbe in text 15 on page 170, the entire purpose of creation is to create a home for God within this material world, a realm of existence that sits at the bottom of all creation, beyond which there's no lower dimension of existence. And for that reason, our primary work and the overwhelming majority of our pursuits are not in sacred matters per se, for that would be similar to the spiritual service of a soul in heaven that has yet to descend to earth, or that has already departed from earth. Rather, our primary engagement is to engage with mundane and material entities. As the Torah instructs us, 6 years you shall sow your field, indicating that we should introduce holiness and divinity even to the soil of a field, the lowest dimension of existence, thereby creating a home for God in the lowest of realms. So the opportunity to be connected with God exists at every moment, but once again, only with the express intention, only when there is mindfulness or meditation. And that brings us to our third and final video, after which I will show a slide which summarizes today's lesson, after which we will see the summary video, after which we will end tonight's session. So let's go back to our square screen. And I think I need to probably move on to the next.
Why do you go to work every day? Whether that work be in an office or a home office or housework. Why do you do this? Is it to save money for the vacation at the end of the year? Or is it to give yourself and your family security for survival? Or do you do it to help self-realize, fulfillment, higher purpose? Since such a significant part of your life is at work, it's important to imbue it with some sense of importance, which it is. Gently close your eyes and picture yourself walking along a gentle sloping path upwards a hillside. And as you move upwards, seeing the scenery around you, it feels so pleasant, so free, so good. Is that the feeling you have when you go to work? And if not, why not? Work seems to repeat the same mechanics. But think about it. You're an artist at work. The artist has the same mechanics, the same paintbrush, the equivalent canvas every single time. And yet, each opportunity is a new work of art. Your work has to be imbued with purpose, mission, destiny. When you speak with your colleagues, you can change their lives. Speaking with confidence, speaking positively, very much affects the lives of those around you. With those words, you are an artist with a paintbrush. The more you smile at work, even without speaking, lifts the spirits of those around you. You affect them profoundly. The way you conduct yourself, personal excellence, self-mastery, gives those around you a sense of pride in the same work. The mechanics may be the same, but the mechanics are only the means of you to express your true artistry. Allow your work to be clay in the hands of a sculptor, changing your attitude, giving your work a sense of purpose, meaning, changes the world and certainly changes the lives of those around you. And this will reflect in you. You will see how your own life becomes changed, positive, uplifted, happy through your work. Work is important. It occupies so much of your day. Allow yourself to be the artist in the studio in context of your work. And that way, allow the world to be a beautiful garden that everyone can walk in with admiration. Gently focus again on your breath. Breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Feeling the coolness of the air as it enters and the warmth of the air as it exits. Begin moving your fingers and your toes in the room where you are. Move your fingers, move your toes. Become aware of where you are now, and gently begin opening your eyes, coming all the way back into the here and now.
Be conscious of the divine energy in your food. Utilize the daily body and soul reboot. Find God in the mundane work routine. Those are the three ways that we discussed tonight of making meditation practical.
I think the work one was a bit simplistic.
Okay.
Idealistic.
Well, go for the other two then.
Lesson 5. Mind your business. Reframing the routine. 1. Jewish meditation is action-oriented, designed to deliver practical results in both physical and spiritual well-being. 2. Know God in all you do is a major axiom of the Jewish value system. It speaks to the notion that everything we do, not only the overtly spiritual and religious, can be an expression of godliness. 3. Eating can be transformed into a mindful spiritual act. On a simple level, this can be achieved by being conscious of the complex journey from our food's origins to our tables. Making a blessing prior to eating brings that mindfulness into focus. 4. On a deeper level, all food possesses divine energy. Being conscious of that and eating only for positive purposes allows us to release that divine energy from the food and transform a mundane act into a divine experience. This too is brought into focus while reciting the blessing prior to eating. 5. Sleep is an opportunity to reboot and refresh. We can imbue it with profound significance if we take stock in the expiring day, resolve to perform better tomorrow, and use our nocturnal rejuvenation to break free of past toxicity. 6. Work is not simply a means to an end. Humans choose to work, even when they do not require the money. Rather, work satisfies a basic human need to earn our own success. With proper meditation, we can find God in the mundanity of our daily work routines.
And so next week, in our final lesson, we'll wrap up this 6-part series. Let's come back to our Zoom over here. Let me pause the recording and stop the recording.